Everything you say can and will be held against you, court of
Exactly.
law. Hey, everybody, this is Jeff with All Keys Pro. I am here for my first interview for my channel with my good friend Brian McRae, who I've known for decades now. Hey, Brian. I'm
Hey,
in Omaha, Nebraska, and Brian is in Lyons, Colorado.
absolutely.
Yeah, and when I first met Brian, he was like this killing drummer. He still is a killing drummer, and we did gigs together. I think we did some. I can't remember exactly what gigs we did some like some church gigs and some other stuff too.
Yeah, we did some of your sick band and we did some
Yeah,
of my Gogo Lab band, just some random kind of
totally.
rock funky, weirdo gigs.
Yeah, it was always fun.
Yeah,
And then at a certain point, you started doing this amazing studio work, and you built a studio in your backyard. I'm going to let you talk about this and
sure.
tell us how that transition sort of had happened. And you still have a company called drumoverdub.com, right?
I'm overdubs, yeah, plural.
Dubs, drumoverdubs.com.
Yeah,
And
confusing.
that's amazing. You can kind of see into his room there over his right shoulder. You can see his drum room there, and all of this is in his backyard in Lyons. It's amazing. We've done several little hits there, and they've always
Absolutely.
been really fun. So I thought maybe you could just kind of talk to us about that transition between being a gigging drummer and then looking at the other kind of side of the business as far as production work and stuff like that. So
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say I'm honored that I'm your first
yeah,
interviewee. Hopefully, I won't disappoint. Um, let's see, real quickly. I mean, we're all gigging musicians and we're all doing all kinds of gigs from this and that. I think back in 2004, I was doing a lot of commercials at a recording studio called Coop Studios. I think that's where you and I did some stuff early
yeah.
on.
Coop Studios, great
Some
studio.
great people over there, and we had a lot of fun. I remember working with Kip Kipper, who's one of our friends, who
Hmm.
we'd go in on Friday morning, and I'd load in drums at 8:30 in the morning, and he'd show up with his coffee, and we'd get to play, whatever, a Ford commercial or a Coors commercial or something, and it was always really really fun, and it was really professional. And I just always loved that aspect. And then, you'd be waiting for the next call, and it would be like, another month or two or something.
Right.
And so about what I learned out of that was that Kip, he basically sold the piece to the client via using MIDI drums. So he would, being the producer, just like you, he would mock all this stuff up, and then he
Sure.
would show it to the client, and the client would be like, "Yes, we want to go in that direction." And then they say, "Well, we're gonna, it's gonna be this much better with real musicians, and it's gonna sound better, and it's gonna feel better." And so forth. And so we would go in and do those, and the clients would be there, and they'd watch us do this thing. It was really fun. So anyway, that idea got in my head. I was traveling around with different songwriters. One, I'd been on the road with a woman named Sherry Jackson and another girl named Sally Taylor, and different people. And I'd be in this van, and I'd be pining to be, you know, um, sleeping in my own bed,
Hmm.
or doing something where I wasn't just in a van traveling around on the road. And
Right.
so that's where the wheels got turning a little bit. And so I took the one thing of, okay, this person that we put on the drums and the bass after this piece was written. And so that's where that idea of drumoverdubs.com popped
Hmm.
into that. And at the time, I have to say that there were three people in the world that I saw doing it. There was one
Hmm.
person, two people in LA, and one person in Australia.
Wow.
So I just looked at that kind of stuff, and then I was really trying to sell the idea for quite a long time. Not physically sell the idea, but sell the idea of, hey, you can send your
Right.
stuff to me, and I can put on these drums after the fact. And when I was doing it, so many people were just like, what, And I knew that was happening with digital tapes. I know a lot of people that were, they were having John Badesky put on a keyboard part in New York, and they were, sending it to the record label, and that was done with an ADAT. So all
Right.
that stuff was possible.
Oh yes. The good
So
old
then,
days.
yeah,
The
exactly.
bad
So
old days.
exactly. So those were, that was the file sharing that was going on back
Yeah.
then. And then as we progressed, I was doing the stuff out of my house. First of all, I started off in here, which is a small control room, and I used to have the drums over here
Oh,
and
wow.
the equipment. I bought the first Digi 001 that they came out with. I was touring with a rock band from Chicago at the time, and my brother Greg and I were, who works at Coop Studios to this day. He and I were teaching ourselves Pro Tools and that kind of stuff. So that kind of went on, and then I had a run with a guy from Los Angeles who was doing a lot of movie trailers.
Hmm.
And in that case, he wanted I offered an upgrade, and I ran a snake out to my house, and my house has a nice kind of vaulted ceiling.
It does, yeah.
It's not huge, but it's a nice, really nice sounding room. And I was playing drums in there, and I said, oh well, for the extra money you can get this. And so anyway, for another 8 years or whatever,
Hmm.
then my drums lived in the house. I ended up digging a tunnel or a tube, put a tube into my house, so I'd have this control room and I'd have these drums in the house. Then I got with my wife, who's we've been together for 10 years or so, and X amount of years in, she was like, okay, well, maybe we need to have a house we can live in.
The
And so
lovely
anyway,
Jesse.
lovely Jessie. Yeah.
Yes.
So she and I had also been looking to maybe relocate to Nashville or somewhere at that point, and
Hmm.
finally made a decision. I hemmed and hawed over it for a long time, and then decided, you know what? I'm gonna just stay in this beautiful little town of Lyons, which is a gorgeous little town. I'm gonna retire here someday, and I want to have this space that's very professional, because I felt
Yeah.
like it was a lot of that was lacking in the area, as far as like even rehearsal spaces and stuff. You go to Nashville and you get an SIR or this or that. Not that anyone can afford that, but around our area here, there wasn't as much of that. There was the place in Lafayette, the Dog House, and a
Right.
couple other places. But so anyway, I just wanted to step up my game, and even if it was just for me and the people that I played with or the people I recorded with, I just wanted to feel more professional, I guess. So
Yeah.
anyway, then went down the long road of actually building a building, and that was quite a feat.
Wow.
I did
Yeah.
that 4 or 5 years ago. I think in October it'll be 5 years, and it's a
Yeah.
building within a building. It's a separate foundation. It's all that stuff, and I was able to basically unplug all of the inputs that were going into the house and turn it around the other direction and plug
Hmm.
in all of the inputs from the building once I got to that point. And it took a lot of
Yeah.
time and a lot of effort,
Oh
but
my gosh. Yeah. That's a huge project.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky to have completed it before the COVID thing happened, before the price of everything went up. I couldn't afford to do it today at these prices, or where real estate is and stuff. So I'm just lucky to
Real
have.
estate and materials too have gone crazy. Just
Yeah, I mean,
lumber
the
and
materials have
yeah.
come back down a little bit, but labor has just skyrocketed.
Hmm. Hmm.
I actually just saw the guy who built my place a couple days ago, and I just asked him his rate, and it's pretty close to doubled. And
Wow.
so yeah, so that was a
So
challenge.
did you do the plans for your studio? Did you work with an architect or?
I worked with an architect, and
Uh-huh.
I did all of the. I read this book, the book everyone should have. Build
Oh
It
yeah.
Like the Pros.
I have that book.
Yes. And
Great book.
it's a great book, and I read it twice, and I made sure, or I read it many more times than twice. I highlighted the living daylights out of it. Then I got on those forums. I forgot the forums. The guys in Australia, they have those studio forums. You
And
put
there's
up,
gear sluts.
yeah, there's gear sluts, and then I'm spacing the guys in Australia, but they'll like tear a hole in any plan you have. Like you could put up your plan, and they'll just like tear you a new one. Well, what are you
Are
trying to do? Blah blah blah.
you crazy?
They beat you up. And then a whole bunch of other online sources. But long story short, I did the best with what I could, uh, you know, with how much land I had to build on and so forth. And at some point you just got to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And I put it in some of these drawing programs. I tried a gazillion different ideas. I ended up keeping a control room here in this other building and building a separate space that's tracking, and it has It has a live room, which you can kind of see up there. And then there's also there's a booth here somewhere. There's another booth that it's about a 9 by 11 with or a 11-foot ceiling, 9 by 13. It's good enough to fit a couple people in. There's a picture, overhead picture, a drum set.
And where's the organ?
The organ is over there to the left.
Okay.
I can actually physically turn the camera with this thing and zoom in on it.
Oh, cool.
Boom. There is the organ.
There it is.
So anyway, so I I was able to do that, and lucky to do that, and was really lucky to have that during the COVID time. I would go out there and just put on Netflix and just play drums and watch a movie or something, just to have a space. And then later on I was able to actually have a keyboard friend of mine come over, the guy who services the organ, Tyler Adams, great guy and great player, and he and I would just sit there and like write songs together. And we did a keyboard and drum record, which I still haven't put out yet, but it's pretty much done. And we just like, our goal was to like, let's write three songs a day. And he was in the other room, totally separate from me. I was in the other, so we could actually be creative a little bit.
That's very ambitious, 3 songs a day.
Yeah. We were just throwing stuff, there's a few that are pretty good. But it was just like, drum and organ, jammy, funk music.
Yeah.
But again, it was a way to be creative. And then since then, I mean, I've been lucky to have been able to have a whole, do a whole bunch of stuff out here, do a lot of live streaming. And that's kind of what I've been focusing on lately.
Yeah, tell us about that a little bit, because that's been, I've done a few of those with you, and it's always really interesting how that all comes together. And you have to coordinate the cameras. Recording a band live. Like
recording
that's a lot of inputs. Yeah, exactly.
It's what the opportunity came from, a company called volume.com, and they were launching a platform which is out there right now. Anyone can go to volume.com and you can see it. They have all different kinds of stuff, whether it be jam band to there's a venue in New York City now, the Bitter End is broadcasting on volume.com.
I remember the Bitter End. I wonder if it's the same room.
The one with the brick wall in the back. Third and Lindsley in Nashville, Nectar's in up in Vermont. So they have these different rooms. They have cameras in those, and those are more like operating music venues that are doing it.
Yeah.
And when I started with them, they were just trying to get a platform going of like, well, is this going to be a Twitch for musicians, or what is this going to be? Blah blah blah. And at the time, they had a lot of people that were kind of playing covers in their bedroom, and they just had like all these different, just people all over the world kind of doing stuff. And then I was like, well, let's bring in some working musicians and let's give them a gig somehow, and blah blah blah. And so we came to an arrangement where I could do that kind of thing, and this especially toward the end of COVID, which was really great. Is we were able to give a musician a gig, it was in somewhat of a safe, where we felt it was safe enough, and it wasn't, so that was an opportunity for all of us. You did some of those with.
I remember masking up and walking and playing. Yeah.
And then we even put you in the other room, and so forth. And so long story short, that's kind of how it started, and I'm still doing it with them, which is really great. And just the other night, I had Lionel Young and Liz Barnez and John Magny from the Subdudes, and we just did one like 2 nights ago. I just remixed it. Got it through this morning, and
Lionel won some big contest, National Blues contest.
Yeah,
right?
Lionel won the Memphis contest twice.
Yeah, he's a heavy cat.
Yeah,
blues violinist.
Yeah, he plays fiddle, he plays guitar, he does all this stuff. But the long story, or to make it short, there's 8 cameras out there. There's cameras that QSC has provided, which has been really nice. Christy Rose works for them. She's the one who's doing the video here, and so these cameras are you can they're PTZ cameras. You can turn them around, you can zoom in, just like I was doing. And then there's some other cameras of other types and so forth. But she can sit in here and she can control these things with their QSys software.
Wow, cool.
And so you can see the picture of the room there, and I can zoom, whoops, I can zoom in and zoom out and so forth if my iPad didn't mess up there. But long story short, she can control some of those cameras from in here, and she can actually adjust the white balance and that kind of stuff. And so when we do these kind of things, I usually kind of put on my Merv Griffin hat and look up a bio of people and try to come up with a way that we can all just kind of talk in the room about that featured artist, and we all hang out and talk and we play and we eat some tacos together, and it's been a really fun time. So
you're the funky Merv.
I'm the funky Merv, I guess. Yeah.
Funky Merv Griffin. That's really funny. So
it's been a blast. So
I mean, I've had the experience of running a studio, and I found it really challenging to wear those many hats.
Yes.
So sometimes you're an engineer.
Yes.
Sometimes you're a mix engineer. Sometimes you're a recording engineer. Sometimes you're a producer. Sometimes you're a drummer.
And you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and boy, I found that really tricky to juggle those different parts of my brains. Do you have any secrets that you do to kind of get through that?
I don't know that I have any secrets. I think I just try to, I just got to do what I got to do in the moment, And so there are times when, like, for instance, when we do these streams, I also have an engineer who comes up, Randy Hansen, James Total's come over once or twice. And in general, like, I know how everything works, and I pre-set up almost everything. And then usually Randy and I get together the night before and we test and make sure we're getting signal and blah, blah, blah. So in those cases, I have some help. But then there's other times where to give people a good rate, I'm the drummer and the engineer for the day.
Yeah.
And so in that case, these, let's say we had a 4-piece group or something, I have to go through and make sure, get my template up, make sure everything's working and so forth, make sure it's all right with the earphones, blah, blah, blah. Most of the time the drums are, there's a different drum sets there. There's vintage, there's modern, blah, blah, blah. But those inputs are pretty much set and forget as far as like they're locked into, this is your kick channel, that's your that. And then, so they're about 80% of the way there. And then when
you're pretty sure that side of it's going to just come up.
Yeah. I mean, that side is usually pretty good, but you still have to check,
of course.
Or if you have a client coming up and they said that maybe they sent you something to work on and they're driving up to produce you, then you're going to get out there and you're going to work on it work on it in the morning, make sure you got your levels right and everything's, sounding pretty good for them when they show up. So there's just a lot of stuff you got to do. You got to wear a ton of hats. And as you know, being in this business, there's no, like, you can just do this or you can just do that. You have to, you really got to learn how to do a lot of things unless you luck out with something that, really, really goes for you. So, or
unless you're that upper 1/2 of 1%,
exactly.
You're Steve Gadd or,
Yeah. Or some really, great musician or producer or whoever.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to have a lot of hats and you have to pay attention to, well, how do I treat my room and how do I do this? And, you have to just get as much information as you can. And then you're on the Pure Mix forum and you're looking at, you're trying to learn about mixing and you're trying to learn about this and you're trying to learn about that. And next thing you know, over the years, you develop some knowledge and, you
get to know your room really well. Yeah, that's a good feeling. What things are supposed to sound like, what they sound like in your room, and how that translates out into the world. Yeah,
which is always it's still a challenge for me.
Yeah, totally. Well, that there's so many home studios and people doing music in their bedrooms, and I think you've taken it to a whole new level. And
thanks.
What do you think's just to wrap it up, what do you think is in the future for someone like you?
Oh God, I was, it's funny you mentioned that. I was just watching the congressional hearing on AI.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty scary.
Pretty intense.
It's pretty scary. So I don't know if any of us will be, having jobs doing this, but I still think that people are going to want to have an experience of creating something. I think that's the thing that we have to bank on, is that, people are going to want to get together in a room and
Right.
have a creative experience. And so I think that that's always going to be there. I think I'm thinking out loud, but I'm wondering from the streaming side, is if the technology will become good enough to where, let's say that you and I, and we get a little group together and we're going to do one of these things live stream, and we're going to sit and play in a room together. I think someday that we're going to be wearing or have some kind of earpieces that'll have spatial audio going in them, and we'll have, some kind of headset, goggles on. And
Mm-hmm.
what I imagine is, like, you'll be able to load it up like a game and be like, okay, let's play Wembley Stadium tonight, and you load up the preset, and you and I can see each other and still function like we're a group, but then we would get the spatial audio around us, and we'd be able to have this experience of, like, what it would be like to play or whatever,
I love it. I love it.
I
Yeah.
I do think that's going to happen at some point. If I could figure out a way how to push that forward. Just, I mean, it's kind of like a video game at that point, but
Right.
then you wouldn't have to travel, you know, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard. What band are you going to play with that's going to be able to do that, right? But the fact
Right.
that you could have some kind of an experiment like that, it would be like a simulator for a jet or something.
Right. I mean, on a very basic level, all the reverbs do that, right? I mean, you
Yes.
can load up a reverb that's from the power station. It's the power station room,
Right.
or yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of there. That's very basic compared to what you're talking about, but it all comes down
I
to
imagine
bandwidth.
some of it's out there, though,
Yeah.
with all the gaming and all the stuff
Yeah.
that's going on. I really do think that there will be a way for people to, I mean, kids in 20 years will be putting on their goggles and be like, yeah, I just did this, yeah, whatever. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if it'll make them a better musician or more, anything like that, because it's a different thing. But I just feel like that those are some fun experiences that one might be able to have in that new world of technology, versus
Mm-hmm.
like playing the same old bar gig or the
Mm-hmm.
same old such and such where they're
Yeah.
telling you to turn down and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking about.
I think being a musician changes every generation.
Yeah.
It's different. Musicians my son's age who are, he's 23.
Hmm.
It's a lot different the way they think about
Absolutely.
stuff and what the skill set is, and it's really cool. It's really cool.
Hmm.
Um, and being a jazz guy, Miles Davis always liked to have the young guys in his band who are doing the
Yeah.
new stuff that inspired him to move forward. He didn't
Right.
he could have had, when he was in his 50s, he could have had a band of 50-year-old killer guys, but he didn't. He had all 20-year-olds and
Yeah.
25-year-olds, and that was a formula that worked incredibly well, because there's him, who's this genius band leader, and then there's these amazing young guys, and so that was pretty cool. So we
Yeah.
just need to figure out how to do that. We need to be the Miles Davis of the future.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for being with me today, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will. This will be going up on my channel, All Keys Pro,
I
on
look forward to it.
YouTube, and I look forward to it too. I
And
look
let's
forward
let's
to.
do another. I think we could probably figure out a way. I have done it before, where I've done a live stream, and I do that for my clients when I'm doing the drum overdub thing.
Yeah.
I'll actually be, I have an overhead camera over me, and I'm streaming the session, as we're going along. And sometimes I'll have another box of, like, your face there, and we can
Hmm.
talk via, the audio movers plugin or something. We some of
Yeah,
that
or I
kind of
could
stuff.
just make a track that you could
Yeah,
put drums to, and
yeah. And
I
so
could
we
be
could
there
maybe we should
virtually.
look at
Yeah,
do let's do something like that,
let's
and
do it.
kind of continue the online experience.
Okay, sounds
All
great.
right.
Peace,
Thanks,
man.
Jeff.
All
All
right,
right. Take care.
you too.